This season on the art and science of complex sales, we're thrilled to present Tales from the Front Lines, a season developed for the leaders shaping the future of complex sales. We're bringing you straight into the action with the C-suite, VPs of sales, sales development experts, and top-performing sales execs who are redefining success in the B2B world. These are the trailblazers that are tackling tough sales cycles, coaching sales champions, and aligning teams to deliver exceptional results. So join us as we unpack the hard lessons, the breakthrough moments, and the invaluable insights from the best in the business. It's more than a podcast, it's a guide to growing revenue with confidence. So let's get started. What's going on, everybody? Hey, today I'm excited to welcome Anthony Nix to the show. Anthony is on the front lines every single day, and he's founder and CEO of Transformative Sales Systems. He's got over 25 years of experience in both sales and operations, and he's bringing a practical and results-driven approach to sales leadership. Currently, Anthony's working with multitudes of organizations as a consultant, coach, and fractional sales manager. He's helping companies build effective sales processes, train their teams, and achieve their goals. So he's seeing the front lines from multiple areas and multiple industries. And his experience is spanning those industries, and his passion, you'll get it coming through, his passion really lies in succeeding both individuals and teams succeed. So let's get started and jump in with Anthony Nix. Anthony, welcome to the Art and Science of Sales. How are you today, man?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. We've been planning this for a while now. Mm-hmm. And I'm super pumped about this because you are, I'm going to let you explain kind of your role in the sales world currently, but it puts you at a really, really unique vantage point for understanding what's going on in sales across multiple industries and with multiple organizations. So do you mind just sharing a little bit about what you're currently doing today?
Yeah. So I run a fractional sales management company, which was originally started as sales training, sales consulting kind of a business. But as I launched that company, it became pretty apparent pretty quickly that there was a need out in the world with owners, CEOs that are running businesses for sales help. Too busy, not enough time, maybe didn't feel that they had all of the sufficient way of running a sales team. You know, they're a little hesitant, don't think that they're necessarily doing it right. And a real desire, a real appetite for that kind of help. So my business transitioned from a sales consulting focused business to fractional sales management. So our company will go in, work with a CEO and owner, figure out what their goals are. What do they want to be when they grow up? Basically, what direction are they headed? And then we help them design a plan and a strategy for the sales team to meet those goals, to meet those aspirations that owner may have. And then we take over their sales team for them and run it as acting as the local sales manager, and then reporting back, with touch points and that kind of thing, based on what their desires are, to engage with us then, going forward. So that's what we're doing today. It's pretty exciting.
That's awesome. Well, and I love it for this season and this purpose too, because as I was talking with you, we were talking about there's so many things that are shifting in the world of sales. It's shifting at an amazing rate. And there's also a ton of things that are either going backwards or staying the same, like where some things are entrenching. So just this particular season that we're doing around just what's going on the front lines is really, really, I think, necessary. Mm-hmm. And you have this unique view of seeing it from a CEO's perspective, seeing it from a manager's perspective, seeing it from a rep's perspective, and across industries. Right. So what type of industries, just to set the stage, what type of industries do you have a particular focus that you're working with teams in, that you're taking in knowledge from?
Yeah. So it's a little agnostic.
Okay.
Primarily, I like working with B2B teams.
Okay.
We do have some B2C type clients that are working in residential services industries. So my background, when I started in sales, actually when I started all the way back at the beginning of my career, I came out of school as a mechanical engineer, and was working in quality assurance, was working in operations in manufacturing facilities, which actually was kind of an interesting place to start to cut my teeth, because doing what I was doing, I was dealing with customers, but I was dealing with customers from the standpoint of issues that maybe we had with a product that we had manufactured. Working with them, learning some of how to overcome objections, how to understand those customers' needs, that kind of thing. So I did that for, I don't know, first 10 years of my career. And I moved into this interesting position that was quality manager and a sales engineer rolled up into one job. As that job continued to mature, I found that sales was much more to my liking. That was where I started to gravitate toward. And I finally looked back and said, quality assurance operations, I'm done with that. I'm going to move off into the sales world. And I've been doing that now for, 25 years, just gaining knowledge, new processes, but primarily in manufacturing. But as this business rolls out, we're dealing with everything from imports from China and then distribution in the U.S., residential services for homeowners, still manufacturing as well. Another one that I deal with is helping schools and churches with communications, that kind of thing. So it's kind of gotten to be a vast and varied grouping of markets and industries that we've gotten involved in, which has been actually very exciting to do.
Well, that's awesome. So you got to tell me. So what are some of the shifts then that you're seeing from back in the day?
Yeah,
when you worked to now.
Yeah, you made a comment a minute ago about going back and some of the old. Some of what was old is becoming new again.
Tell me more.
It's going to sound like a strange comment, but there have been changes in the last year and a half on the ability to prospect, and email marketing has become much more difficult with some of the changes that Google made and some things like that. Messages aren't getting through necessarily the way that they used to, right? And going back and doing things like cold calling, taking a qualified list and sitting down and literally dialing for dollars, if you will, to generate new leads, new prospects that you can then pull into your funnel and start to shepherd through the process. Those kinds of things seem to be more of the trends. That it's funny. A lot of these sales teams that I engage with have gotten really tied up into workflows and automations, and they think leads are just going to fall in their laps. And almost every one of them, they aren't falling in their laps. So they're missing goals. They're not making their numbers, and they want to attribute it to a lot of different things, but it's go back and do what's tried and true. And there's nothing easier than to sit down with a good qualified list of names, or do your research, find the folks that you want to talk to, and just doing a cold call campaign and looking for those individuals that would want to engage with you, that have some type of a problem or an issue that you can provide a solution to. And that's kind of the direction that several of the teams that I work with, those are kind of the directions that we've kind of moved in. We're kind of going back to some of the old methods, which they still work. They still work fine. People just don't like to make cold calls. You have to be an individual that will sit down and consistently dial. And then when you do get a hold of somebody, be prepared and able to have that conversation. But the ones that are doing that are the ones that I'm seeing having some success.
I just got off a great conversation with one of our team members, Zach. He's one of the best prospectors, flat out prospectors I've met. He can hold a conversation with just about anybody. And we were looking at some statistics, and the email channel has died. It's just what we've seen is it's dead. And maybe we're doing it wrong, right? There is that possibility that we're doing it wrong, but the phone, as you're talking about, is not.
No,
it is not. And it really is. We can have those. So when we start to look at it, social's getting more crowded, like LinkedIn's getting more crowded.
Plus they're changing some of the ways that things that were really effective for me 2 years ago, they've taken away. Your ability to use that system the way you could just 6 months ago has changed dramatically. I've seen that in my analytics. They have plummeted in the last 3 months. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, and because you've used that very successfully in the past too.
Very successfully. But some of the changes they have made is making, and I'm doing A/B testing. I'm trying to figure out, what's the algorithm doing? How do I get the message through all of the noise, reach the people I want to reach? And I still haven't quite figured it out, to be honest, at this point. I'm trying some new marketing schedules and doing some other things to see, what do the analytics do? And am I reaching the audience that I want to reach? I do think part of it, though, is they're trying to drive you to the point of, doing the boosting and to spend dollars where everything I had done 2 years ago, it cost me a dime. But yet I was reaching a very big audience, having great conversations, but that has started to shift.
Well, there's that. I'm wondering, and this is just something I've noticed that I've seen coming back is two other things. We're just focusing on that prospecting area. Events, in-person events. I've seen actually starting to, and I think they're going to increase a whole lot more, especially with the advent of AI. And the second is one thing that absolutely fell off the table once email marketing started to come into play, and digital marketing and social, is people completely turned away from, and not completely, but almost 100% turned away from good snail mail marketing. And I'm talking cool stuff. Like I remember when I was it was 2003, 2004, the best campaign that we ever ran with a security and with an endpoint security company was we took t-shirts. We took 4 or 5 t-shirts, threw them in a box and sent them to, and they all just said security on the front with a Art of War quote on the back. And you wouldn't believe the number of leads we got and we sent it to the CISO, the head of IT security. And they were like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. This is amazing. I got to give these to my team. That's died too. But do you have any perspective? Are you able to leverage those type of things across industries right now?
Yeah. So I don't do the snail mail that you're talking about in terms of actually sending things like that. But one of the things that I do, and literally people will connect back with me because of this, is a handwritten note after I have a conversation or, something that happened, or maybe it was, you mentioned networking events. Those are picking up. I'm seeing a lot more of that, a lot of drive towards that. If there was somebody there that I felt like was somebody I really wanted to get to know more, I wanted to be able to engage with them, I come back, I'll do a handwritten note, stick a stamp on it, put it in the mail, and they will reach back out because it's so unexpected. No one does it anymore. So it stands out when, they're going through their all of the ads and garbage that they do get. And then they pull out a postcard and they flip over and, oh, wow, this is actually handwritten. It's not a fake one that's been printed out. And they read the note, right? Little things like that go a long way when you're trying to develop a relationship with a potential prospect or someone that you've decided is somebody you would really like to get to know. And we're doing that a little bit with some of my teams. Some of them don't make a ton of sense to do, but some of them do. And those are things that we're trying to implement with those teams. Just little follow-ups, right? Just little notes. I'm thinking of you. I want you to think of me. And they are effective for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting with the realm of, I think there's almost two schools of thoughts when we talk about going, and we started this talking about going back to the old, right? Or some of the things. But the one school of thought with the advent of, digital is going to be able to exponentially increase in terms of the next 10 years. It is, and it's already happening with AI, right? So, but the thing that can't exponentially increase and also can drive the most is that person to person, right? So because it forces people start to understand. So I'm fascinated to see that pick up over the course of the next 3 to 4 years. I think it has to, like, because people are there's a whole segment of the population that just gets increasingly wary of all the digital communication. The other segment of the population is like, no, I want to get an AI call. Like, I'd like to have that quick so I can tell, yeah, no, I don't want this, or yes, I do. And that's also fast. I don't think that's quite worked itself out yet. I don't think we have good tools to understand what's going to work, but I don't know. That's what I'm seeing. Are you seeing anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I see similar. I mean, humans are innately wired to want to be with one another, to interact in a personal way, to get to know one another. And that impersonality of AI bots calling, text messages that you can read them, and dang good and well that a person didn't generate that. That came out of some AI generator. I think there's a longing in the space, in the markets, to go back to a little bit of the way we used to do things, to develop an actual real relationship between a buyer and a seller, or just people in general. I think we've become, in the last 4 years, right, the whole thing in 2020, 2021 pushed us in this direction faster than I think we were ready to go, right? The automations, all of those things rolled out really fast because sales teams and leaders and owners and CEOs thought that this was the way that we can keep the sales machine going. We can't meet in person, so we're going to embrace this technology, and we're going to start using it all over the place. And I think the pendulum might have went just a little too far one direction. And I think it's actually on its way back the other, where people are craving that interpersonal connection with someone. But not to say, because some of my clients, we do email drips, we do text things, we do things with bots. And if you do it right and not overdo it, right, where that becomes your only channel that you are communicating with your clientele, it can be effective. But you got to be very thoughtful about how you implement those things. Don't just go willy-nilly. Every contact you get, you put in your CRM, you send them through a crazy workflow where they're getting dripped on every 2 days, and and all these things are going on. Be really cognizant of what you're doing, and think about the experience on the other end. Do you want to be a person that's receiving text messages constantly and AI phone calls and all those things? Think about how the human is going to react to that onslaught of information and those types of things. So.
Well, so we've gone down that path. Let me take you down another path,
okay,
real quick, because you see, and this question may be like a several part question. I'll try my best not to do that. But if you look across all the organizations and industries that you're blessed to be a part of, right? Can you look at some of the characteristics of the top, when you look at the top growth-based CRMs that it's not CEO that you're working with, and also some characteristics of the top salesperson in that industry? I don't want to get specific in terms of names and that type of stuff, but if we're bringing it to, like, what are the CEOs doing currently today of the companies that you're working with that are being really successful? What are their characteristics? And the salespeople that are just out there driving revenues for their company, what are they doing? And we could start at either end of the spectrum there.
Yeah, well, let's start with the CEOs. So they have a very difficult job, and particularly when, I don't think I mentioned this at the beginning, but I tend to focus on the small, medium-sized businesses. That makes the most sense for the fractional type of service that we provide for sales management. Larger companies are going to have layers of, sales managers and directors and all of that kind of thing. These organizations that we work with are usually a CEO trying to manage a sales team. Now, the ones that I see that are doing a really good job are process driven. They think about process. They look at data. I have one that I'm thinking of, on top of my head. I very much enjoy working with him, and he's a data guy, very much like me. I sit looking at spreadsheets and trying to understand what's going on within a sales organization, and he's real similar. And what I find is that he is considerably more open to, especially if you can make the case, show the data. Here's what's going on within the sales organization. They're willing to change and flex and do what needs to be done to try to make things better, right? Do a little test here. Let's see what this does. What effect happens if we make this tweak? The ones that I find that are having more difficulty are the ones that are kind of the polar opposite of that. The ones that are just shooting from the hip, that aren't really trying to create the accountability, the responsibility. They probably don't have a good, robust sales process for the salespeople to be able to walk through. Now, you can still have shining stars in those environments. And one thing you'll find about those salespeople is that they develop their own. In a vacuum, in the absence of direction, in the absence of a process, they will develop one on their own. They will figure out a way to make sure that they're achieving their quotas, getting their commissions, earning, what they set out to do. And those are the ones that you see are being really successful. The others are the ones that are kind of like a fly in a jar, right? With the lid turned on, and they're just bouncing all over. They don't have any real rhyme or reason for what they're doing. They see something, they head that way. And then something else gets their attention and they head this way. The really successful ones have that process, and they'll drive something to ground, and then they drive something to ground, and they drive something to ground, where the others tend to struggle a little bit. Every once in a while they get lucky, but they struggle. Now, going back to that organization where the CEO is really on top of his game, really thinking about it. The other thing that they do is that they realize they're not necessarily the end all be all. They're not necessarily the absolute expert at everything, and they're willing to look for help and to engage others that can bring in outside perspectives, that can bring in knowledge and information that maybe he doesn't or she doesn't have, right? And apply that to the organization. Those are the ones that tend to be more successful. There's several of them I work with, and these guys actually just impress the heck out of me about the way they think, the way they do things. It's like, wow. And it is such a joy to work in that environment where you're getting to rub elbows with those types of folks that are thinking in those directions. Very exciting. Salespeople in those organizations probably have a process they're supposed to be running. And if they are doing it and they're being held accountable and responsible to the things that they're supposed to be doing, they tend to be successful. Now, you're always going to find an issue here, an issue there. Some of these things could be personal. They could be, economically driven or whatever that's causing a salesperson an issue. But if you've got a really robust system management around those people, you can help identify that problem, whatever it is, and put some kind of corrective action in place. Figure out how to get them out of that slump, or the things that maybe they're doing that aren't productive. They're not working on revenue generating activities. They're just doing busy work around the office, filing papers, or doing things like that. So,
I just talked with another guy that was awesome, and it was interesting because when you talked about the characteristics of the good CEO, the characteristics of the good salesperson were very similar. What you just said there.
They are a bit.
And I just talked with a gentleman the other day, and I think this podcast the podcast with him will drop in January, but he just released, he was a top performance sales executive. But that was the approach that he took, was that, hey, geez, I'm finding myself working really hard. I don't have a ton of direction, but I know some of the things that I'm doing work. So he just started cataloging what was working for him and what wasn't. Then he built his own sales process out of it. Like it essentially became, and then he got real excited and wrote a book about it. I can't wait to read the book. I think it's going to be awesome. But that ability is not inherent in all salespeople.
No.
So when and I don't even think that's probably like the top 5%. How do you come into an organization, especially as a fractional, and help people understand like how they build that process, how they build it effectively, where there's gaps, and how do you institutionalize it? Because it seems that's a big part of both the successful CEO and the successful salesperson from your standpoint.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, I in my early career, I had W-2 jobs where I'm selling something, but no direction really given to me. And I'm a process data kind of guy. That's how I look at the world, right? Others don't necessarily look at the world that way. And that's great. We need, folks that look and think those ways, the same as these process driven people that are a bit like me. But when you come into an organization like that, you've got, if there's a 6-woman sales team, they're all going to have a different opinion. They're all going to look at it completely differently. And when I do come into an organization that doesn't have any kind of sales process, and that's 75% of the time, we're going to have to develop one. So that usually is an engagement with leadership, the owner, CEO, if there's other leaders that are part of that process. So part of that happens there, but part of it also happens with the salespeople, because exactly what you just said, they know the things that have worked for them. And we'll go through and we'll list all of those things out. We will categorize those things. We will lay them into the steps that need to be implemented and develop the process internally. We all own it. This is our process. It isn't something that some dude came in and just dropped in our laps and said, now you're going to do it this way. That typically, it can work, but by developing it with the team, now they own it. Now it's theirs. They believe in that, right? This is the way we're doing things. We developed this and designed this. And so we believe in it much more. We'll take a hold of that and we will operate to it. So you take that sales process, you implement it into the CRM so that process, your qualifying steps, each step through the process, all of those things are built into the CRM so that it helps guide them through that sales process. Click this box. Yep, I got this information. Yep, they've got a budget. They've, whatever our qualifiers are, those are all built into that CRM. And then you have to build some KPIs and metrics that will measure that activity, the things that we're trying to accomplish. You never want to over measure, and you don't want to measure the wrong things. You want to focus that effort on what our goals are. What are we trying to achieve? And those metrics and those KPIs need to align with that. And then a cadence of weekly group sales team meetings to go over those results. How did you do? And you talk about this in front of everyone else. So there's an accountability, to me, who's reporting this to your leadership, but then there's an accountability to the team, within the team. Peers can have an awful lot of influence within a sales team of helping to hold one another accountable. And then individual, one-to-ones, where we go into it a little deeper. We won't do that in the weekly meetings. We're not going to belittle or, create angst. It's just, here's the report out and everybody gets to see. But in the one-to-ones, this is where we get a little more deep into it. So what's going on? Why are we missing this one particular metric or KPI that was set out for you? And then understand what are the issues that are there. So now maybe it's coaching, training, mentoring to help them be able to achieve those metrics that they've been put, tasked to complete.
So I have 2 questions come out of that. And I'm going to ask them both and ask you to respond to them in whatever order you want.
Okay.
Number 1, you made a statement there which says we should not over measure. So I want to understand that because I believe I agree with you wholeheartedly, but I want to understand what you mean by that. And second, in that vein of not over measuring, what have you seen across industries, or have you seen a particular KPI across companies and industries that is game changing when you nail it and hit it? Like, I know that there's the standards. There's a bunch of standards that we all follow, and in sales, everybody has those. But have you seen one that's just like, dang, I go into every organization and there's something here that's the same? So do you mind tackling those two questions?
No. In fact, I'm going to tackle the last one first, and then I'll get up to the over measuring. I wish there were a silver bullet, Paul. I really do. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I've spent the last 20, how long has it been now? 26 years, a little more, looking for it. Mm-hmm. I can't find it. It is so specific to industry, to clients that you have, that you need to be really thoughtful in those metrics and KPIs that you create, because the KPIs and metrics that I use in the distribution business that's importing and distributing in the US does not work for the residential home services business. They're completely different. They're totally disconnected. Every business requires the deep thought on what are the best metrics to achieve the results that we're trying to achieve. And in our case at Transformative, we look at that at every one. And I can tell you that of all of the folks that we work with, there's none of them that have the same set of metrics that we're watching. It's vast, varied, and very dependent upon both the company and the customer base that they're dealing with. Now, to back up to the over measuring part, this is just, it's one of those things where people think better is more, or more is better, right? The more I do, the better things are going to be. And I will argue to infinitum that is not the case. That if you throw a dozen metrics on a sales team, you're not going to be able to help them move in any particular direction. They're going to be trying to get a little bit done here, and a little bit done here, and a little bit done here. And they'll end up failing, particularly if those measurables are very far apart. They're completely different things, right? And there's no association between them. So when you're developing those KPIs and metrics and goals, it's another thing I do is we'll develop quarterly goals, which they could be something as mundane as developing new cold call scripts over the course of that 3 months and setting out a plan for how I'm going to get that accomplished, to a cold call list. And I've got 600 names I'm going to call, and I'm going to try to call 50 of them every week, throughout this period, whatever it is. They're little separate goals. And usually salespeople will end up with one or two of those each quarter. And each of them have something separate. They're not the same for everybody in there. It's more individualized to what they're trying to accomplish and that kind of thing. But the goals that you do end up setting, KPIs, metrics, measurables, they need to be aligned with the goals that what you're attempting to achieve, right? They need to help drive focus, to affect behavior in a particular way, that we get everybody marching in lockstep towards a singular goal, whatever that is. Is it revenue? Is it new logos? Is it whatever it is? But the measurements need to be associated to that, and they need to align with whatever that goal is. And if you've got 6 different goals and 20 other KPIs and metrics, you're not going to achieve any of them. So you got to be more singular in your thinking. What is that one thing? What is that most important thing that we need to achieve for this business to be successful? And then the metrics should align with that.
That's awesome. No, thank you very much for diving into both those. And I really appreciate that explanation, because a lot of times you walk in and people measure everything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah. And I don't think it's a bad thing to measure all aspects of the organization, but it's where I think it's the focus you give on very specific things that drives it home.
Yeah.
So, geez, it's already 35. We're going to have to wrap up. This is, I think we could probably talk. I will take this opportunity to invite you back. If you're willing to come on in 6 to 12 months, would you be open to it?
I absolutely would. I've enjoyed, I think we talked about this when we were before, this. If somebody wants to talk about sales with me, I will sit and talk with you about it for hours. It's a strange love that I have with this profession. And the thing that I absolutely love is when I start working with a sales team and I start seeing success. I start seeing salespeople getting excited and fired up because they're achieving the goals that they have, right? Because we go through a whole thing of setting up personal goals, which then, transpose into your professional goals and all that. But when I see those flickers of light in their eyes, that they're hitting their goals, their personal lives are becoming a little more fulfilled because of the success that they're having in their profession, man, that's it.
Okay, so here's my 30 seconds. I'm going to make it 45 seconds to a minute. I already wasted the first 15 seconds of it. I couldn't agree and align with you more on that. It's so good when you see that aha moment and then the continual self-leadership and success that people grab onto, because you look around, I don't have very many things on my wall or that type of stuff behind me, but everything around you has been sold, right? That's everything that's been made and has generally been sold. And it's one of those things that you start to impact that individual, you impact their family, you impact their community, you impact their company, you impact the world. So I think it's an incredibly noble mission to elevate this profession and go about it as you are. So thank you. Thank you for doing that and for being so passionate about discussing it, because it's one of those things that it gets overlooked far too often. It's done poorly far too often. And when you're finding people, just diving in and getting better together is just awesome.
That's what it's about.
All right, man. Well, hey, thank you so much. How do people get in touch with you, Anthony, if they want to have that conversation, whether it be 15 minutes or 3 hours on sales? Yeah. How do they get in touch with you?
The best and easiest way would be go to our company website, which is www.transformativesalessystems.com. You can Google it. You should be able to find us. Hit our company page on Google. We're also on LinkedIn. Myself personally, Anthony Nix. If you find me there, send me an invite. I will most probably connect with you. I have to go through and pick out some old ones and toss so I can add new ones. I'm at the maximum number of connections that you can have on LinkedIn. But you can go.
Is that a humble brag? Come on.
No, I'm not bragging. It's taken me. I've been on the platform since it started. So it's taken me, a decade and a half to get to that level.
That's cool.
And then we also have a company page, Transformative Sales Systems, on LinkedIn. You can find us there as well. So phone numbers, emails, and things are very easily found there.
All right. Well, hey, everybody, thank you so much for listening. I highly recommend reaching out to Anthony. You're going to get a great conversation, if nothing else. And he's got some chops and some years of experience behind that will help you grow your business. That being said, we're going to sign off for today. Please hit the like button. Make sure that you're subscribed on all your favorite platforms. Share this out if it's something that you find worth sharing out. And we truly appreciate you listening. Keep shining bright, keep elevating your game, and have an amazing day. Hey, y'all. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Art and Science of Complex Sales. I hope today's conversation provided you with some valuable insights and some practical ideas to help you and your team succeed in this complex world today. This podcast is brought to you by Membrain.com. Membrain is the B2B growth platform for CEOs, sales leaders, and sales executives committed to sustainable growth and change. Membrain equips your team with the methodology, the process, the people, and the tools to continually improve and coach results. More than a CRM, it's designed to help your team execute with confidence, smash goals, and overall up their sales game. So if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, share it with your network, and your support really helps us bring more valuable insights from the best of the business straight to you. We'll see you next time for another episode of The Art and Science of Complex Sales. And until then, as always, keep shining bright.